Can you hear us okay, Justin? We're gonna get started in just a minute.
Don't worry, it was the.
Can you hear us, Justin? Looks like you're muted. We can't hear you.
Yes, I can.
Echo and not being able to hear. Can you hear us, Justin?
I can hear you.
We're gonna have to.
Welcome, everyone. Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Dr. Terry,
Here.
Piskovich. Here. Ross,
Here.
Trim,
Here.
Wager,
Here.
Morninghouse. Here. Council liaison, Councilmember Breckus. Here. And I'm staff liaison, Tyler Trump. Mr. Chair, all members are present.
Yeah, that's excellent. All right, well, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and open up A2 public comments. Do we have anybody registered officially in the room?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair. We have Susan Hoffman, who's registered first. I'll remind everyone in the audience to limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'll give you a little wave when you're at 30 seconds, just to let you know where you're at. And we'll go from there, but let's go ahead and start with Susan.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm here regarding the Sullivan family fence. I'm not quite sure what the style of the fence is going to be, but I'm objecting right now because a 6-foot fence is pretty high. If we approve one 6-foot fence in the neighborhood, we might end up with a lot of people with 6-foot fences in solid wood or whatever. And it does make for a little bit of a problem sometimes when you're backing out of a driveway or coming to a corner. You need a little bit of a safety issue when you're driving. So I'm not sure what their plan is, what the fence is going to look like. If it were an iron fence that's open, then it might not be a problem. But those are my comments. I am a little concerned about the safety factor in the neighborhood. If one gets approved, I'm pretty sure they'll probably approve a lot of others, because people would like to have 6-foot fences in their front yard. I think 4 feet really suffices. There's lots of 4-foot fences now. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Chair, I don't have anyone else registered to give public comment during opening public comment. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to give comments?
I'd like to speak on that same subject, the 6-foot fence.
Yeah, if you can just start by
I'm sorry, Nancy
saying,
Gilbert.
yeah, oh,
Okay.
thank you, Nancy, go ahead.
A 6-foot fence creates a liability issue for little kids, if they're pulling the cars out and whatever, it's not safe. I know that a lot of the zoning that I'm familiar with, especially in Douglas County and other areas, doesn't allow it. So to say that it's a safety issue for kids and for people walking, as they're walking in the river.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I'd ask
Thank you.
people to fill out a public comment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to give public comment during this item?
I've got a question
Yeah.
about this. I'm not sure the right way to approach it, but I suspect that every homeowner going forward is gonna have some question about how to do this. And I think what we've already seen to be true is people end up erecting these fences with or without approval. And they wait on the city to just issue some kind of like, hey, you can't do this kind of thing. I am wondering, in these types of situations, is there a way to go forward where that type of allowance can be made while also looking out for children who are walking, where cars can't see it? So I think this is gonna be like a nonstop type of issue where people are gonna bring up something and it's gonna get shot down or approved.
I think that would be a good comment when we're in the item. I'm hearing the fence because we've got that on the agenda today.
Great.
So we've got some staff here. Hopefully we can help address some questions in the owner. Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment today? If you'd like to give public comment via Zoom, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll give you just a minute. Okay, Mr. Chair, we don't have anyone indicating they'd like to give public comment, which closes out item 8.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item A3, approval of the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to at least review the agenda? And can I get a motion to approve this? Second, all in favor?
I,
Passes. All right, then I believe it moves into A4, approval of the minutes. For possible actions. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes? I know I haven't. Seems like so long ago.
Just a quick comment while we're reviewing, I forgot to mention we did receive one public comment via email. It is included in the materials for the board members at the beginning of the packet, and it will be uploaded after the meeting for members of the public to view.
A quick skim, I don't see any changes there. Any other changes or concerns with the minutes? Can I get a motion to approve, please? Motion approved. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
I,
Decline. Okay, motion passes. All right. Thank you, everybody, and moves us into A5, defense liaison report.
All right,
Yay.
thank you. So let me start with winter preparedness. That's kind of top of mind to a lot of folks. We used to have a presentation in the fall from the Public Works Department on what they were doing, and that has ceased, but I think and everyone really liked it, but I also think they've also done such a better job in being prepared. But you know, when we used to have those, we were coming out of the pandemic or the Great Recession, when the state laid off a third of its workforce, a lot of winter preparedness was not getting done. But the typical winter preparedness activities are first and foremost, cleaning all the drainage ways and making sure all of those are in good working order to the river. And then a lot of clearing blockages elsewhere on the storm drain network. And then leaf sweeping is a big component of that. I don't think they've brined anywhere yet. You know, they do street brining. The weather, has been pretty mild so far. I did want to ask Tyler to show folks on the City Public Works website if they have questions about the leaf sweeping schedule. And this is primarily focused in the areas where the neighborhoods have street trees that are owned by the city. And, I go back and forth. I was up in Northwest last night at some friend's house, and, people have all sorts of leaf bags bagged up for their waste management pickup. Whereas in the area where the street trees are, people can just put them on the curb, and then the big vacuum trucks come through and get them. And the theory is the city's not picking up private leaves. They're picking up street tree leaves. And where's the schedule, Tyler? Can you show?
I think it's on the map. It's broken down into different.
Okay, zones, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they do go to different parts of the city for street sweeping, but they don't necessarily have that allowance for the big, tree leaf pickups. You still have to go to waste management for that. Do you have that? That's the area, that's the zone I think that gets the most attention for street trees, because that was a different development style where you had a lot of city-owned street trees and what are known as parkways. But and sometimes I've found, I don't know if anyone's quantified it, they do get diverted on different things. I noticed today that the parking lot here was getting swept. Maybe some of you can get in when you get, and so they kind of get pulled off of these schedules sometimes on special assignment. I don't know how faithful they are to those, but and as far as I know, there is not anywhere in the city where we have no parking for street sweeping. We don't have that. We haven't moved into that yet, but sometimes if you have you or someone is parked in the street and they can't get in there, then you do have a problem. And they might, but the hoses are actually pretty big. So the other thing I wanted to mention, but I don't have the details, maybe someone knows, is Waste Management did change some pickup dates, right, Tyler?
I believe they.
And those went into
changed-
effect pretty recently. Ward one, what is known as Ward one, was not gonna get too impacted. I think it was down like West Fourth Street and down there, but a lot of folks, have new, pickup days and times, or days, you know, so, that's been a kind of big change in Ward one. Let's see, capital improvements, we're coming to a close of the, you know, the construction season, so I think they're buttoning stuff up. We don't have the drama that we've had in past years of projects, you know, really having to chase projects in Ward one that I know of. The one project I'm keeping it, because I'm seeing it in the legal ads being advertised for bids, is the sidewalk installation on Urban and Plumas on the tennis court side, but I think that'll be next year's construction season. So I can't think of anything that's lingering out there and that they're chasing with the weather, which is good. The last, the last two issues I want to mention is airport noise. And you know, Southwest Reno has always been pretty protected from airport travel, airpath travel and flyovers. But I am starting to track and get complaints of noise, flights being, particularly private flights being diverted over Southwest Reno more and more. And I don't know, I tried to get an answer about what's going on. I noticed one personally myself about a month ago. And I haven't called on one before, and within 2 hours, the airport person called me and showed me the online way to follow your complaint and explain what happened. And it was, you know, in what he said, an anomaly of some traffic issues going on, but some of it was also related to flight school activities. There's a flight school that leases airport ground. And I think some of the folks in Donner Springs have been resisting the levels of the flight school is really impacting them. And I don't know if they've diverted some over to our part of the area. I have long said that, you know, airports aren't these sovereign nations. And yes, there's FAA intermix, but I know from a city planning background that cities do have zoning powers, and we certainly can zone if we wanted to and prohibit flight schools in this urban core. You know, it's not transportation network. It's not part of the the system of the national system of air flight. Schools are very differently, and if those become the problem, I do think the city needs to look to their zoning powers for putting those commercial aeronautical uses into our urban airport. And we're a region with 2 airports, so you know that airport should be one an option. And you know, touch and go should not be a thing that's bothering training for private pilots, should not be a thing bothering the enjoyment of Reno neighborhoods. And airport noise, airport mitigation, airport planning is a huge issue. It's like really a subfield, but it's one that I've always kept an eye out for Southwest Reno, because we were very protected from that. And I've always been concerned that that could shift. And the airport leadership now is not as responsive to my inquiries as they have been in the past. So I'm going to just keep talking about it. The last issue, well, actually 2 more, is code issues. The code issues that we've been following quite a bit are truck trailers and RVs down in the White Fur area. You know, it's a commercial zone, but it's also got a lot of mixed use characteristics. Problematic too, because of that at Gray Railroad crossing. And so we're getting a lot of complaints there. And that parking function at the city just does not have the mechanics to really get those out of there, whether they're abandoned or the truck traffic that they need to. And it does cause conflict when someone's got a flatbed on a street that's used for local traffic, and also, you know, on a street where a park dead ends. So trying to work with Tyler and the different folks in the departments on that one. Nona Perry, I noticed is the person who provided comment on Oxbow. She lives next, her family has a long history related to Oxbow, and I really do share her concerns of danger over in Oxbow. CR Journeys, who's a contractor to the school district, runs a lot of nature programs. Basically told me the other day they're diverting their nature programs for students, and it's a great spot because it's very central on Dickerson Road, end of Dickerson Road. They can get school buses there and do nice long nature walks, but they have felt, they don't feel that it's a safe environment for them because it's not a patrolled environment. So that's really sad because it's one of the great, spots in, you know, really along the river corridor is Oxbow. And so, you know, this has been a long-standing issue. I've had varying success of getting attention down to that area. But right now it's not where it needs to be, where we want it to be. And I just want to amplify Nona's experience, who is a very good steward neighbor to that city park over there.
So they're not gonna use it for youth programs anymore?
They decided for this semester to just take the last ones elsewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, I use it more just as a reflection of concern. You know, if you don't feel that you can bring 40 kids on a bus through an area,
Well,
that's a recreation area, you have an issue. And there have been in the past camps there and
Yeah.
fires, but I think, I don't know if RPD is just not getting down there. And really, the city has an agreement with the, Nevada, Department of Wildlife, I think it is, Division of Conservation. And I think the management needs to be, better fine-tuned. That agreement needs to be a better fine-tuned. I dedicated, each council member got $70,000 of discretionary funds for the from the big federal relief money to dedicate in their ward, and I dedicated the whole boat of it to Oxbow. That's how committed I am to seeing that recreation area thrive. But it's more operational and management needs that are not being met by the city organization. So I just want to reflect on what Nona said. And then many of you, probably everyone, got a card in the last mail, those who check mail, in the last month or so about redistricting. And it's becoming very confusing to a lot of folks. And I share that confusion. And that's why I did not support the redistricting as it went forward. But it's a political process. Tyler, can you bring up the Ward 1? So let me just summarize it as I know it. I am the Ward 1 representative. This is the Ward 1 NAB. I am in office. My office that I was elected to is till November of next year. Okay, and so let me just go up here and show you. So this is, pardon me?
Just make sure you speak up.
Okay, yeah. So this is Ward 1 right now. And that is where the NAB members have been pulled from. Okay? Now, as people are starting to focus on the election of November 2024, this is the map of where people will file to run and people will vote. And so Ward 1 will be here. I don't live in the new Ward 1. Okay, I just want to clear that. There is some overlap, not a lot. And that was part of my great objection. There's a little bit of overlap. But as you can see, the blue here, if this is Virginia, has been cut, and a lot of this new Ward 1 is Ward 1 basically got cut out. So I, and probably most of you, live in Ward 2. Okay, so Ward 2 is going to be, when I leave in November 2024, the Ward 2 representative will be, that's the seat to which Naomi Dewar was elected. She leaves that seat in 2026. So in November 24, going forward, there'll just be this map. Most of what has been known as Ward 1 is now in Ward 2, okay? for example, I've represented, and it's been a great privilege to represent Collin Ranch, which is the largest of the planned communities in Ward 1. Really, you know, a big population base. They are now all in Ward 2. Okay, so they won't be voting for the Ward 1 person. They'll actually, unfortunately, have to wait 14 years to vote, or 14 or 6 years to vote, rather, for their council person rather than 4. Okay, so that's how it's gonna work. You might hear going forward a lot of Ward 1, Ward 1, Ward 1. Just please know you may not be in it. There's a campaign for that seat because it will be open. I'm not in it, I'm not eligible to run. And you may become a Ward 2 resident in a year, okay? Just what there was a little bit of, focus, kind of angst with, the Ridge, Court, Elm area, you know, was part of Old Newlands, got sliced out of regular Newlands. And that's always been a very cohesive, there used to be a neighborhood plan, Newlands neighborhood plan. So it got split out. So the little Newlands, you know, the Newlands mansion, those on the bluff, those on California Avenue, they're gonna be in Ward 1, but the rest of Newlands will be in Ward 2. And then it slices a little bit down to in Midtown Plymouth area. Yes,
You got that, north-south line on the western border of the new Ward 1?
yeah, north south right here,
No, the other one to the right.
to the right down here.
That, what street is that?
This is, what is it Arlington? It's Plymouth, right here, it's Plymouth. So the line is Plymouth, oh, and so these folks all go into Ward 3. Yeah, so, yeah, because Virginia Street used to be the divider between Ward 3 and Ward 1. And so a lot of those folks are now in Ward 3, and they'll have a seat up. The appointed Miguel Martinez will be, you know, is presumed to want to run to hold that seat, to retain that seat. So there is going to be a lot of confusion. There's already confusion, but going forward for my purposes, because I'll just in 24 be a voter just like anyone else. I live in the part of Ward 1 that won't be voting for the Ward 1 councilman, you know, open seat, because I got put into Ward 2. And, but in terms of doing my job over the next year, I will definitely be representing and responsive to, you know, the ward that I've always was elected into. And, you know, if there's folks who come up to the new Ward 2 or so on, you know, I try to do constituent services, to anyone, and then be courteous to the other person who elects, whose, you know, constituents are, to let them know that I've been engaged.
This goes into effect this January, is that true?
No, it goes into effect. It goes into effect in January, but that's to set the clock for the filing of offices in March, the primary in June, and then the election in November. So when it goes in effect in January, it's really only for electoral purposes. Okay, so think of it that way. I just really, you know, wanted to let folks know, because I've been in here a long time and have a lot of people have my number and reach out, and I'll still do constituent services. And then, but you know, that transition to a big swath, particularly Collin, is going to be a big deal too, because they get Miss Stewart for only 2 years, and then she's turned out. So they're gonna have a little bit of a gap in and representation maybe on the council, but they don't, I don't hear from them too much because their HOA provides so many services. So I'm available to talk to anyone if anyone has any questions about this redistricting mapping issues.
One of the questions I had, so the city has a lot of, or at least some programs that are specifically related to the ward. Top of my mind is the waste management contract and
Yeah.
the yard pickup or the free trash days.
Mm-hmm.
Are they already working on that as far as you know, or? When will that go into
Yeah.
effect?
Well, with the waste management, it is that just, it got put into an amendment of the contract that, in each ward will have a cleanup, right, or each council
Yeah.
member, yeah. I mean, it's very much a byproduct. The real thing on the waste management should be the contract franchise renegotiation, but those will still continue. We'll still have the NAB. But that's also why, I'm not appointing new folks either. Unless we have to. So.
It's
you were
all
here-
gonna
yeah,
change.
So, yeah,
Mr. Chair, can I make just a comment on something that was said? I'm not gonna dwell on this, and the airport's in Ward 3, but I have to speak up. I have been a pilot for 30 years. I am on the board of directors of the Reno Tahoe Aviation Group. The airport is not just for commercial flight, it is for general aviation as well. We have every right to fly there, just like Southwest or anyone else, and have done so for decades. Every airport I have flown in the country likes to be a good citizen. If there are reasonable things to be done to avoid bothering people, we will. Touch and goes are very rarely done at Reno International. Most flight schools take their students up to Stead or Silver Springs or Nervino or someplace else that's not a busy airport to do touch and goes. There's a certain group of people that have recently been very active in complaining about flights, and in fact have threatened pilots to the point where this has gone to law enforcement. So I have to strongly disagree with what you've been saying about the airport. If you'd like to be involved with discussions to make flying better for the community, fine. But to say that flight school should not be allowed, I 100% disagree with that.
and I appreciate your background, and I know, and I've advocated for you to be the city's appointment to the airport authority. Because I think, you bring a great perspective, but I will say, when I first got here, maybe around 2015, 2016, the airport authority the airport's marketing materials said, come fly freight in and out of our airport. We have no nighttime restrictions. So that airport is a little behind in terms of managing the quality of life of the residents. And I called them on that, and they, I said, you're really selling the quiet enjoyment of Reno residents on your marketing material to boost freight, and so they're a little behind. Flight schools, I think they all need to be quantified on how much activity is going on. And that's why this tool was very helpful to me, and I encourage other residents to use it when they feel there's disturbances, because then they will tell you it was a touch and go. But I appreciate your knowledge on that, and I'm happy to sit with you, because I think it was a touch and go that occurred on that day. And, yeah, so. That's that, but this story of airport disturbances in communities, particularly as communities grow around them, that has been written in, we're about the 105th largest city in America. And I don't know where that goes with the airports, but this story of airports and management and disturbances, has been written all over. And so there are practices, and we're gonna, come up to it at some point and have to address it. I know that absolutely. Another thing is, Stead has and my Ward 4 colleague has a concern for that. Stead is going to be has an agreement to allow about 8 million square feet of industrial use up there for non-aeronautical purposes. And so it's gonna get a little there. We're starting to understand the tension up there too.
Yep, there's
Yeah.
if airports can't move, you start putting other things around them, those uses need to be compatible with the airport.
Airports can move, airports do move. When you think long-term enough, they do, yeah.
Okay,
But I appreciate your perspective.
wrap up your.
Yes,
report?
yes, it does.
All right, thank you very much for the
Thank you.
report, Councilwoman. Appreciate it. We move on to item A6, staff liaison report, please.
Hello, everyone. Tyler Shaw, Community Liaison for the record. It's wonderful to see you all here tonight. I just have a few quick updates for everyone. First, I want to make sure everyone here knows that our Parks and Recreation Department is having a public workshop on Barbara Bennett and Wingfield Park. And that's going to be on Thursday, November 16th, from 6 to 8 p.m. right here in this room. So you've all found it once, hopefully you can find it again. But if you want more information, you can just look up reno.gov and navigate to departments and find Parks and Rec. And it's got a link on there with a little bit more information. And if you have questions, feel free to ask me after the meeting and I'd be happy to show it all to you.
Sure, you said
It's November 16th from 6 to 8 p.m.
that should be interesting. That's the,
Tyler,
And go ahead.
yeah, do you know the format of this meeting? Will there be a presentation at a certain time or is it a drop-in open house?
You know, I don't know.
Okay.
It just says workshop.
Yeah,
So I'm thinking
yeah,
it's probably
yeah.
going to be more interactive.
Okay,
than like a
yeah.
full-
Yeah, it's always good to kind of have an understanding. Sometimes they'll do a presentation on the hour and then it's drop in between, but,
Yeah.
um,
I think the goal is just to get the community's feedback.
Yeah,
and
okay.
They really want to make sure it's
okay.
what's going to serve everyone the best. And then my last update, the next Ward 1 Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting is scheduled for December 11th, which is a Monday at 5:30 p.m. And we'll also be right here in this room.
Yeah,
And those are my updates for today.
thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, and that moves us into B1 development projects. And
Mr. Chair, I'm so sorry. I forgot one thing on my update.
Oh.
I just wanted to give a shout out to our member, Nicole
Oh, yes.
Perry. Go.
you're leaving us.
Let us know that today's gonna be his last meeting, so.
We have enjoyed having you on.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, and you were really a helpful conduit in a difficult, challenging time for our neighborhood or our ward in representing your neighborhood. He lives in what's also known as Country Clubs Acres, very distinctive identity neighborhood, just west of Virginia Lake. I think it's going back into Ward 2. It was in Ward 2, then it came into Ward 1, and you came onto our now I think it's back into Ward 2. But you got some challenges there, because there's some folks who've been involved that they're probably ready to give up the mantle at some point. So you're the leading candidate to be the mayor of Country Club Acres, even when you leave us, and we know you're involved in those things.
I will have my hands full for the next
Yeah.
handful of years.
Yes,
But-
tell us.
Yeah, we're having a kid.
Yeah.
Finally, and super excited about that, and yeah, I love being here and supporting our communities. And at the same time, also want to support our little one coming up.
Thank you for your service.
thank you and congratulations.
I was a newborn mom on Watt Avenue, 23 years ago, and now you have sidewalks there, so better
Thank you.
improved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Alright, we go back a second. How's that workshop being advertised?
I believe it's on the city's website, so if you go to, you can just Google Reno Parks and Rec, and the first thing that comes up is the Parks and Recreation page.
It is
I can
interesting.
actually show it to you.
It is interesting. I don't see it on their meetings
Yeah,
website.
I didn't either this week, and
So thank you for bringing that up. I think
Yeah.
that's
I asked
really-
Tyler about it.
Yeah.
So we're,
Let me show you.
It's kind of significant,
All-
particularly in relation to the fact that we're going to lose, most of our park when the bridge project begins.
I'll make sure the meeting gets put up on the city's calendar on the website. That way, most people, I think, look there.
Yeah, because it's the city says, hey, you want to know this meeting going on, like even the NAB, which pretty informal. So that would be great.
But if you go to Parks and Recreation and you click into it, this is their homepage. The Barbara Bennett and Wingfield Park.
oh, it is
Master
up there.
Plan
Okay,
project
good.
Is right here off to the side, and then it has a little box with the upcoming meetings. So this is the next one. And then we've got this information on there about the upcoming workshop.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure.
This seems to be an opportunity there.
Okay, all right.
Okay, where am I? Back on task, yeah, B1. So Arles Snow Parish, item B1, do we have a presentation? Or sorry, any public comment before we get into it?
That's okay. Yeah,
How did you want me to present?
if you could just come sit right here in this empty chair, that way our people on Zoom. can
Yeah,
hear you.
the microphones pick you up that way.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Oh, I didn't see this presenter sheet.
That's okay.
It's our first time doing it,
Yeah.
so.
Right here?
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yes, you're the first one in the hot seat.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your service to our city. My name is John Krampotic. I'm here representing the Snows Parish. Also with me this evening is Chuck Burr. He's a volunteer leader at the church, and Greg Ernie is our architect. Can I have a
I
clicker?
don't have a clicker, unfortunately. If you just say slide, I can advance the slide.
Okay, or next or whatever.
Yeah.
Bill's here. Okay.
Yeah.
So, this is, as noted in the summary, a conditional use permit for expansion of the church. You know, the fancy terminology is noted. Existing non-conforming primary school and religious assembly uses. That's more code talk. It's an expansion of the church and the school, and I'll get to the campus part of this. Secondly, we're in for a major deviation to vary from the maximum building height allowed from 25 feet in the Plumas overlay to 35 feet as proposed. Next. Wow, that was perfect on my screen, but lighting's always interesting on different computer devices. So there is what we're going to call the Snows campus area highlighted in the purple boundary and then shaded. Notice Wright Street. I wanted to draw your attention to that because that's been part of the overall master plan. And you can see that that has been abandoned. We'll get into a little detail there. And then the other shading is the parish hall, which is the footprint of the building that is the bulk of this expansion. And then just to the north where site is, that's the existing church building. And then to the east is the school. And we know reference to Arlington Avenue and Campus Park next. So there is more detail of the campus plan. See the purple, different scale here, but the purple transparency. That was the alignment of Wright Street. Years ago, we went to the city of Reno. The city council approved the abandonment of Wright Street. Along with that, Snows acquired a couple of those. Can you go back one slide? If you look on the west side, you'd see 1, 2, 3 houses that were acquired by the Snows Parish. Thank you very much. And then that coupled with the abandonment created a uniform campus area footprint of the property for this expansion that comes years later. Next. So again, there is the old alignment of Wright Street, and then you can kind of see our parking lot and circulation improvements. Half of the street, Mr. Taxer is here. He mentioned something in the introduction. Last I checked, he owns the duplex on the very southwest corner of the property. The way abandonment law works, when we did the abandonment, Mr. Taxer gets the half of the street on the west side of the street. The other half went to Snows. So the way we've worked this is to have a one-way drive aisle going south like that. It's a good safe access point, only left and right turns out of Monroe Street there at the south end. We do add parking. We obviously add a lot of trees And we have a new plaza. You can see the trees in the pink. That is this little plaza area, thank you, between the church and the parish hall and the school. Kind of a central point to the entire campus area. Next. Just to show you, that might be familiar to some people in the room. That's standing on Monroe, looking north, the one block of Wright Street between Monroe and Walker Street. On the right side, where you see those trees, is the approximate location of the new building. Next. Yeah.
Can I pause for just a second?
Yeah, of course.
Justin, are you able to hear us okay in Zoom land? You're muted, so give me a.
Yes, yes, I am.
Great, thank you. Thank you, please continue.
Of course. The building elevations up at the top is the north elevation that would be facing the church. The west elevation that's facing Wright Street, and then a different perspective, more complete. That's the entire stretch from Wright Street from Walker down to Monroe. You see the plaza in the center and you see the existing church. I think Greg did a fine job in trying to maintain some, the magic in architecture is respect for the existing neighborhood, which he did a lot of red brick, that colony that he has on the west side there, and then the height that was significant to making the architecture look right, and that's what drives the height variance. Next. And then to finish out the elevations, that's one at the top is the south end. That's adjacent to Monroe. And then the other side is next to the school, facing the school on the east side. This is the first floor. I've got first floor and second floor, just to give you what you might predict in the programming of a parish hall like this in a building. The bulk of it is you can see the kind of remnants of a basketball floor that doubles with that being the parish hall for special events. So it serves multi-purpose, obviously. The kitchen, storage, offices, and classrooms is kind of the program. That's the first floor. There is a day chapel there so that if they have small church services through the day, they would be done in that chapel. And then to the second floor, same footprint. You see some classrooms there. And then basically offices. Next. So here's an exhibit that talks about the height variance. You can see the reference to 25 feet on the right side. That's what's allowed in the Plumas overlay. We need 35 feet because of the mansard roof. Also the 12.5 pitch, you can see the triangle up there on the right side of the roof. That is a slope that's required by code to make it architecturally relevant. And so we have the 25 plus the 10 that's encompassed in the mansard roof. That makes the height 2 stories and 35 feet. The basement I didn't mention, but you can see it here in the reference. The 100 is ground elevation. Going down 13 feet is the basement area. That does not count as a story because it's subterranean. So the way the code reads, it's 2 stories up at 25 feet plus the 10 feet, thus the variance of 10 feet or the major deviation of 10 feet. Anything else on there? I think that covers it. And a different perspective, but the same idea. You see the first floor, the height to 25 feet, and then the peak at 35 feet with the 12.5 roof and a more complete representation of that west elevation, the mansard roof and the overall height. And then here is the next slide, please. These are things that we believe as professionals that are good basis and justification for the height, and I'm not gonna read each one of these, but we're talking about urban design, we're talking about master plan policy, and also existing zoning. And then the formation of the campus plan. This plan has been around for 20 years since Snow's started on this. We still don't know if this were approved, the planning commission, and whether it's appealed or not, city council, it would need city council approval. We do not have a financing plan yet that's entirely complete, thus we don't have a construction schedule. But the campus plan has been in progress, this particular vision, with the street abandonment, with the acquisition of the properties that I showed you, for about 20 years. And so this is the kind of final step in at least putting the vision through the public process. The second point I would mention is the mix of uses, that it is comprehensive, and there are buildings and comprehensive in terms of a church, a school, a park with a gym, and a lot of multifamily in the immediate area, some of which are 25, taller than 25 feet. So there's some compelling existing buildings in the neighborhood that speak to the mass and the height that have been there for more than 60 years. The existing zoning is MF 30, which allows 45 feet. The again, we're asking for 35 feet, and then the thing that trumps that in this case is that Plumas overlay plan. The master plan overlay, I think that's a little bit confusing, and we wonder about intent. Have not discussed this with staff, but a third point is made here. Master plan overlay, while it's located in the Plumas residential core planning area, many of the uses are not residential. Thus, there's been a variation of height. That's what's going on in this point. It's not practical to allow for a mix of residential uses, but apply the core residential core restriction. And then the last point, again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, we already have, but the architectural design to be significant and complete in the community. I say in this profession, we make 100-year decisions. And that's really what happens when you go forward on these, maybe longer. They're forever decisions for the most part. And so they need to be done with the right scrutiny and the right design and comprehensive planning to our community. And I think, next, please. Oh, that's zoning. I'll just leave that for Q&A if you guys want to talk about zoning. And one more slide. That is our project team. Father Bob Chory is on sabbatical right now, but he's the leader of the Our Lady of the Parish. I didn't know Tim, but he is also the principal of the school. Greg Ernie, who I mentioned, Architects Plus. David Jockman, he is with Kimley Horn. He's not with us this evening, but he did a traffic study and a parking study to make sure that everything works. Circulation is very tricky here because it's kind of an old school neighborhood. We're expanding use, need to be very responsible, particularly with regard to public safety in dealing with the drop-offs and the circulation and the parking. And my name is John Potter, as I mentioned. I do land use planning and community planning. So that's all I have.
John, thank you very much for the presentation. Definitely appreciate it. Are there any questions from any members of the board?
I don't so much have a question, but I have some comments on this.
Okay.
This is my neighborhood. And I heard pretty strong opposition in the neighborhood about the height variance and so forth. It looks like a beautiful building, but this is a residential area, old residential area of single family small homes. Already there are a fair number of buildings that are 25 feet or so that have been put in that are already disrupting the neighborhood. We talked before about that hideous townhome project that's a couple of blocks from this, and the density that's going to create. There are already traffic flow issues in the area, a huge number of people dropping off and whatnot. So people are really disturbed about questions with more traffic impacts and putting up a very large, very big building in an area of small, mostly single-story homes, and it's just not fitting.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a question. In looking at the plans, and trying to understand, what is the current limit of the building height? What are you trying to get to and how much further above that limit?
25 feet is the limit in the code, 35 is proposed.
Okay, so an additional 10 feet.
That's correct.
Can we go back to the slide that shows the half block, the taxer block?
Yeah, the abandonment area, that kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
This one.
yeah,
I think.
actually, that's the best one.
yeah, yeah,
The next one
Yeah,
is better.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Yes.
yeah. Just, for disclosure, I never supported the abandonment. But the taxer property, that's gonna be a challenge for him. Cause he's gonna have more are those new trees gonna be on his irrigation system? I guess I would presume so, cause it's his
Well,
property. It's his property, so you're gonna have to, he's gonna have a whole new irrigation, like bringing in new area into your if he has an old irrigation system, how's that gonna work? Do you have a irrigation plan yet?
We do not have
Okay.
that level of detail. I have called Mr. Taxer. I have texted Mr. Taxer. I've offered
Okay.
to, that half of the street is in his ownership.
Oh,
We-
okay. So you
Yes, so
don't
we
have to
don't
do
have the right to go
Okay.
to, and I wanted to disclose this.
Yeah,
Those trees, what appears to be turf and trees in there is part of his property. So we would need permission to go improve it to whatever level of improvement works for Mr. Taxer.
yeah,
Otherwise, we leave it as it is and it'll be a remnant piece of a street. and
Yeah.
We just put a
he
curb
just
up.
gets a street,
That's it.
yeah, half street.
And
Okay.
I left him a message. I've shared this with staff that the way I look at it, and I don't want to get into space by any means. I want to present it entirely as an opportunity for him
Yeah,
to get whatever works best for him.
yeah,
If he wanted to give us the street, that would be fine. Or sell us the street, that would be fine. Depending on willing
Yeah.
buyer, willing
Yeah.
seller, there's another.
and this is going to planning commission?
This is going to planning commission. We have worked through the issues at this point. Such that I got the description for noticing today from
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, the submittals to the planning commission materials have to show, as built, and so.
Yeah.
That's an issue you have there, if you're showing stuff you can't, there needs to be clarity on that.
There does need to
approval.
be clarity. I agree with you entirely,
Yeah.
and
I'm just-
I want to work it out.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very safe as designed because you have the one-way throat. And it eliminates conflicts, but I mean, ideally. I would like to, Mr. Taxer knows this. I'd like to talk to him about it and see if we can work
Yeah.
something to his satisfaction.
yeah,
That
cause
all works for
the,
both parties.
there's been some problems coming out of planning commission, and I sit on appeal, this comes through appeal, so I don't get into the specifics, but there has been some problems lately coming out of planning commission where they're making approvals on other people's land. And so they need to write very clear,
You're exactly right.
you can't,
Yeah.
you can't approve someone else's
Then
land.
You can't without
It's not
either
part
an
of the-
easement or, that's right.
It's not part of the APN even.
That's correct.
Just a second. Do the general board comments, then we'll open up public. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I have one more question. You had mentioned that there are other buildings that are mixed use and therefore. As rationale for like why this should also be allowed?
Yeah, I'm saying context in the overall neighborhood, right? When you have a church, we don't have it in, line of sight view to see how tall the church is, but. It's an existing church that's been there since the 1950s that sets a height precedent. The gym down the street, in the overall character of taller buildings in the neighborhood, this is not a standalone. And then directly across Monroe Street is a two-story multifamily building.
And is that above 25 feet?
That is not above, it depends on how you measure it. It's a two-story building. I do not believe it's above 25 feet. Yeah, it's 2 stories. Well, there's 2 pieces of the equation. One is height, one is stories, right?
And so if this were to go forward, this would be the only building that's at 35 feet in the neighborhood? Or are there other buildings?
No, the church is close to 35.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question or two. I want to make sure the new construction that we're talking about, that is the parish hall proposed building, is that
The
right?
Parish Hall and the improvements, could you go to the, thank you.
Yeah,
So you see kind of the, west of what was Wright Street, the landscaping, the parking and the circulation and all of that is also,
and so what the parish hall currently is basically a parking lot.
that's correct, yeah.
Okay, and so that isn't immediately adjacent to any single family, but it is pretty close. The other question, the one thing that I wasn't clear about is, are you increasing the capacity of the school as well? And is that part of
Yes,
this
the
project?
classrooms, can you go, Tyler, to the,
'Cause I saw all the stuff, but I didn't,
there you go, classrooms there on the south side, you see on the right?
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so there is some classroom expansion that's part of this. How many, 6 classrooms, how many students of additional, capacity? 50?
Okay.
50 coming from the architect. He did the drawings. I'm gonna trust that.
Okay. So the gentleman who did the traffic study isn't here, but one of my questions probably for that gentleman, if you looked at it already, what's the circulation plan for pickup and drop off for school? That's the worst time of any parent's day.
There is, go to the, excuse me?
Actually, go to the site.
It's so, well, I think.
Yeah. So it's something, I guess my question is more than the specifics, what is the plan that's already been looked at and talked to the neighbors about, and the neighbors know what that plan is? Because they're the ones who are gonna have lines of cars.
They know
Twice
from
a
the
day.
history of, there's been a lot of activity with the neighborhood in this multi-year period that I've mentioned, right?
Yeah,
We have legal public access, by the way, that was part of the abandonment from Walker to Monroe.
mhm,
So you can just drive through there, right? It's not like there's any ability to gate this or bollard it off. You can see the pedestrian connection is direct, just like it was with the old street. But now what we have is ability to assign loading and unloading areas, since it's now private property, which has not been the case with Wright Street. No ability to do that. So we're gonna designate loading, unloading for the parents who are dropping off their children in that area. We're talking about it in that one-way throat right next to the parish hall, or up in the middle, or I should say up in the middle, in the middle of that parking area. That's correct. 2 of those being designated. One bank of those being designated for loading, unloading.
so he's in this space.
In addition, you have the curb that's, worked this way for many years on Walker Street, on Monroe, and then Lander Street is also private property owned by Snows.
Lander Street's private property?
Excuse me, the half of the street. Go back to the 1 footprint of the, see the. It would be nice to have a pointer, please. You can sort of see the width of the street here. Half of the street is owned by Snows, the other half is still public. That abandonment was done many years ago, before my time in this.
So the circulation plan for the, call it 9 and 3 every day for, I don't know, if you got 50 new students coming in, I assume most of them are gonna be driven.
I will tell you, David.
You have your traffic engineer has either already addressed or is actively addressing the issue.
He has
with-
addressed it, submitted to city staff, development reviews, traffic engineer has approved it.
All right, I'm sure we'll hear from the neighbors.
Yes, we'll hear from neighbors and maybe more from staff.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my question. I know there's public comments.
Are we done with board comments?
So are we done with board comments? I'm sorry. Okay.
We'll start with public comment, just as a reminder, each comment will be limited to 2 minutes. Please start by stating your first and last name before you begin speaking. And if you haven't filled out a public comment form already, I'd ask that you. Go ahead, Mark.
Really fast.
Yeah.
My name's Mark Taxer, I live in that wood duplex in the jog down corner. Little background, years ago, when the abandonment was first done. You can check the video, City Hall, I think it was early 2018. I either asked for more incentive to abandonment, but I got the street. And the church had at that point promised that, you know, when they do all this, that Wright Street would remain open to traffic as it currently is, which I've seen that two-way, not one way. I guess my chief concern is the new two-story monolithic edifice facing my living room. With the abandonment, they're measuring setback from the middle of the street rather than the backside of what I think is sidewalk. Backside of the curve of the sidewalk, which it now is, which would mean this is 20 feet closer to my house than it previously would have been, having abandoned and not have it. That and traffic and maybe some light pollution and all the rest of that sort of thing. Lights coming in, I better than we do it. Probably covered, well, that covers it for now.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Thank you. I want everybody to know that Snows will do, I mean, you know, I have to qualify this with whatever's reasonable. But I have met with Mr. Taxer the last round, which was the abandonment. And said we will do fencing, landscaping, light control work, irrigation, whatever it takes to be responsible to make it right for the impact, perceived or otherwise, to Mr. Taxer. I respect what he's saying. I've convinced the leadership of the church that we will work with him in any fashion, again, that's reasonable to get this right. I mentioned it as it goes with the street improvements and everything else I just mentioned. Thank you. Put it on the record.
You've got a minute. You've got a minute. Seconds left.
And we don't, but the
But they're
one
not-
thing.
The
one thing that I would say at the NAP the reason I'm here, okay, I don't know about anybody else, the reason I'm here is to hopefully find parties to find some sort of equal way to go forward. Okay, not everybody's gonna be happy with everything, but at least have an open, honest dialogue. So, in that spirit, yes, please. I am, like, don't throw it.
I did have one, you go back to another,
Yeah, one more zooming, right, of that area, I think, yeah.
and I walk up to the screen, is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So. You know, well. So is this line the current middle of Wright Street? The dash line in the middle?
Yes,
Okay, so this is my house, and this has sort of become landscaped, and it's now streets. So if this did get landscaped, is this the current sidewalk, or would make a move?
whatever you want. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna turn this into a wheel and dealing discussion, but I mean, that's,
Yeah,
you know.
and I'm not gonna mitigate this either, okay, that some council members do that, I'm not going to do that.
Okay. Well,
But the plans need to be very clear how it comes out of the planning commission.
I agree with Councilwoman Breckus. They do need to be clear because we have to have permission to do what we think is best on Mr. Taxer's property.
And I think there needs to be clarity also on his obligation to maintain that sidewalk.
Yeah, there's tax implications, there's the landscaping, maintenance of the landscaping, there's a lot of things that I think that you guys still need to talk through. So, but I'm glad you guys are talking already,
Yes.
and I would encourage you to continue to do so. Are there any other, Mr. Taxer, is there anything? Are there any other public comments?
Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment? If you'd like to give public comment on Zoom,
They're over here.
please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
raise your
didn't
hand
see you. My apologies.
I will call on you in just a second. Go ahead and start by saying your first and last name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Jan Morrison, I'm a neighbor. The parking lot backs up into my house. I doubled the size of my house last year, and so I've got 25 feet going up. And by the way, the church has been fabulous neighbors. I'm totally in favor of this. I love the expanded parking lot. It's from a practical point of view. I walk my dog every day when the kids get out of school. And although there's a lot of adequate parking because of the huge park there, I can see where that's really gonna help alleviate some of the stress around the neighborhoods. I moved into the area and my sister and I bought it. She bought it because of the church. I bought it because of the architecture and the mixed use neighborhoods. I love mixed use, high density. I love the apartments mixed in with single family dwellings. And I think the church is a beautiful established look, which is very much like old Reno, and our house is also brick, so I love everything about it, and they've been great neighbors, and I think this plan makes a lot of sense.
Thank you for your comments, Jan. Please fill out a public comment form. Jan Morrison.
Did you say Morrison?
Morrison,
Thank you.
Her public comment will be included in the record as well, everyone else's public comments, so you'll be able to see who spoke.
I think that's somebody in Zoom, you said?
I was just checking.
Did I miss anybody else in the room since I missed you? I apologize.
I just had a quick question. What is the elevation?
Sorry, can you state your name one more time?
Like Rob. Yes. One of the elevations, you've got the 25 feet and then there. 50 feet for your roof, but the inside slopes down, so it's like the basement exposed. In one of those.
Could we go to, thank you,
Is it, it's this
right there.
explain,
this one?
That, what is that? You want me to cover it?
I know what it is. It's a grade change. There's quite a step down. From what you're seeing is steps. Right here. But the school, there's quite a grade change. Yeah, we don't feel the school in this section. But there's a big step down between the church elevation and the school. That's what's going on. And you're just seeing a slice of it, so it looks a little bit odd in the presentation. I don't know if that's an adequate explanation, but that's really what's happening. Does that make sense, sir?
It makes sense. It's just what you showed us, the 25 feet, the 10 was on it, and where it was a grade and there. It's to be added and it's still in part of the license because they don't to another street. That's just what it looks like. But
Are you asking whether,
This-
where the 25 and where the 35 is, like which side is
well, what I
is
heard.
which?
That one right there. Because
So,
that
we're
one
into that
just starts to
building,
show the grade.
There's the beginning of it starting to drop down, and then all of a sudden is that 50 feet.
What is the, what, how high is it on that side? On the left side?
Greg, do you know what the elevation is on that side?
Yeah, let me elaborate a little bit about this. It's, as John alluded to earlier, this project's been in the works almost 20 years. The project was presented at the time Wright Street was being abandoned. And at the time, 25-foot limitation on height was not part of the Plumas overlay plan. The 2-story was, the 25 feet has come into play in the newest version of the ordinance. So this elevation was presented whenever 2008 and was part of what was presented as the rationale and the need to be able to abandon Wright Street. Now, to answer your question, yeah, this is the this is the west side of the building in the parking lot. This is the alley between Harry's Bennett and the school. So there is a differential there. But in the ordinance for determining height, more than 50% of the footprint around the outside is basically that grade. I'm not going to get into all the detail because it's too confusing. But that's how you determine the height, so the height is determined from this elevation as opposed to that elevation. And if I can point out, the height of the building as it's perceived when you're around the building, is really here. Yes, it does slope back because there's some other ordinances that have to be met. No flat roofs in the neighborhood. And we have to screen all the mechanical equipment. So the whole parapet was there to screen the mechanical equipment and wouldn't normally be part of the height of the building, except we have to put a roof on it to meet the other aspect of the ordinance. So all of a sudden, it becomes part of the building as opposed to a mechanical screen. So there is a slope roof between the edge of the building, which is at 26 feet, and the height of the screen, which we call a parapet wall that screens the mechanical equipment that's on the roof that serves the building. So I don't know if I explained it.
No, it was just a question.
Okay, I hope that helps clarify the whole issue of height, flat roofs, and everything else that comes with the project.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is that it for in-room questions?
Got 20 seconds left. Go ahead.
Can you go back to the overhead parking lot area? I just wonder if there's been any study or research done into the heat island effect or partial surface parking lots.
No study done.
Residential.
You know, we specifically choose those big canopy trees, as you know, Mark.
They look like they cover about 5%.
Well, yeah, that's not a maturity, that's just an artist rendering, right? But, I mean, the right tree in 10 years is gonna have a lot more canopy than that.
Okay, thanks. Parker, do you have anything?
Yeah, just to clarify that, the code actually requires the highest canopy grade for trees and parking lots. So what's even represented there may not be represented what we require according to code.
Can you state your name for the record?
Carter Lake Assistant Planning.
Thank you, Carter. Seeing no other questions in the room, is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give comment? If you'd like to give comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll give you just a second. Mr. Chair, it doesn't appear we have any comments.
There we go. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I
Oh,
think
I do have a question for Carter. Yeah, because I haven't been to one of these in a while. I thought staff usually did a presentation, but maybe they're just here to write
Yeah,
notes.
they're normally here just to answer questions.
Okay, the question is, what is Mr. Taxer's property zone? I think it was on the last slide.
It's zone multifamily 30 units per acre.
And what's the minimum lot size for that? 1450? Something
I
around
think
that?
you're right, it's 1500.
1500? I'd like to understand if the abandonment area represents the potential for a buildable lot to Mr. Taxer
The lot size minimum is 3,000.
in the MF 30? Okay. Really? Oh, and we're in 14.
In
What zoning district?
MF 30. The density is 1 per 1450.
One, okay, so 1 per 1450.
Yeah, but the minimum lot size is 3,000.
Okay, but he could with 1,450 square feet add a new unit onto that property because it's a duplex. He would have a 3-unit lot then.
might
Or who else?
roll into density bonuses too.
Yeah.
Yes, that's available. I mean, I'm confused on the question. Are you saying with his current size?
Yeah.
So he has about 8,400 square feet, so so that could be 4 or 5 units.
He has how many?
But so 8,400 square feet.
With the abandonment.
Oh, excluding the abandonment area?
That's what I'm asking about.
That's assuming that that area is covered by an access easement that we reduce from it, and I don't know that.
Oh, is the part that was abandoned to him covered by an access
I don't
easement?
know that.
And then you've got setbacks.
Yeah. Depending on what all that looks like, you could add a unit.
Chair,
When you have a project that is proposing the creation of a large new parking area, how does that relate to the stormwater requirements? Infiltration basins, detention?
Standard stormwater detention requirements based on the increase in flow. For the 5-year and the 100-year, that's the way we manage it for any urban condition.
And there has been a stormwater study.
Conducted. It's a very small amount of the big picture. You can imagine that, but not to trivialize it, but it's a very small amount. There's not a lot of contribution, you know, of impervious surface, yeah.
Okay.
Shall meet the code.
Everybody, are we done with comments on this one? Okay, I think so. Seeing nobody else, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Everybody else, your comments? Let's move on to item B12, the Sutherland fence, please.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for having me and being here. I wouldn't have put animations in my slide if I knew I didn't have control. So sorry. Go ahead and hit next.
Can we,
Sorry about that.
can you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, my name is Carrie Sutherland. My husband John and I grew up in Reno and we bought our dream house, 843 Marsh Avenue, on New Year's Eve, 2016. Not to make it the Catholic night, but we bought our church from the Diocese of Reno. What a coincidence. The history of my house is sort of important to my fence project, so I just wanted to share that a little bit. We bought it from the Diocese of Reno since 1947, when Bishop Gorman purchased the property. It was the bishop's residence from 1947. In the 80s, the Diocese of Reno was formed, and since 1947, 7 bishops have lived in the house. We're the first family to live at 843 Marsh Avenue. Since buying the house almost 7 years ago, we've made ongoing significant improvements while being incredibly delicate and careful to maintaining the historic integrity and the character of the home. Every square foot of the house has been renovated of the interior. This fence project is actually the last of our list. My goal has been to design and renovate and to bring my house into this century and make it functional for a family, since the family has never lived there, while being very careful to just bring out the beauty and make it feel like it was a place. Any improvement I've made has felt like it should have always been there from day one. I didn't try to take a 1940s house and make it something modern. And the history of the house is very much, there's a nod to it throughout the fence project. So I'm happy that there are neighbors here and that I have this opportunity to share more because it's not quite a major deviation, the way that the city code requires me to apply for anything quote different. So next slide. I wanted to give just a current view. This is October, early days of decorating my house for Halloween, where we celebrated 3,000 trick-or-treaters or more before 8 o'clock at night. Just to call out a couple things while you're looking at it. We're right in the center of Marsh, and I think most of you know Marsh, the city of Reno closes our street for Halloween. Just to point out a few things, there's a significant slope to my driveway. The architect who did the as-built drawing said that the difference from approximately the street to the foundation, the bottom layer of my house, is almost 5 feet. So when you enter my driveway, you're going straight up. Just because it got brought up earlier, like the idea of backing out of a driveway, like I did go out my way, I'm a mother, and so safety is also a priority concern for me, for my kids, but the neighborhood too. But I enter my driveway from the right-hand side as I pull straight into my garage. When we exit the house, we go around the U-shaped driveway and we always exit, and turn right or left from that view. Just so that you're aware of a couple things. The weed dirt area at the beginning where you actually can kind of see a yellow tape that actually marks the proposed location for my fence. So just to start with the exterior view, you can go to the next slide. So approving this major deviation, Does meet every standard as outlined by the city master plan and the city of Reno development standards. So I believe that it does improve the safety and security of my private property, both for my family, but also for the community. I have concerns that, you know, my house sits on 3/4 of an acre and the front yard is essentially unusable because my 13-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son want to play basketball, but they can't because I cannot risk a ball going down into the street. I think that's a danger for my kids, but I also think it's a danger for a ball that gets thrown into somebody's car while they're driving by. I have a golden doodle and a golden retriever. My golden doodle will chase down anybody on a skateboard or a bike. I think that's a community safety concern and also a concern for my dog. So I'd like to have a fence. I want to be able to secure my property when I'm using the front yard with my family. And it certainly will enhance the visual appearance of the built environment. My street, it's certainly compatible with public spaces and nearby architecture. The design itself is designed to add character to my property, but there are many, and I did include 5 examples in my application, like even as close as directly across the street. But there are many 5-foot plus, 6-foot plus solid fence walls. I'm happy to be here and have the opportunity to put my project through the proper processes to get public feedback and input. But it isn't outside the character of my neighborhood at all. I think it will only make my house, my street, and Newlands better. You can go to the next one. Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
That's not right. Go back. You gotta be able to see it.
Is it just turned 90 degrees? So
Yeah,
we could just
no, you
imagine?
can't imagine it. I want you to try and fix it.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Okay,
Thank you.
it's not, it's even like off of scale. It's like zoomed in weird.
Let me see if I can find your,
No.
The file she sent you is what you're looking for, yeah.
everyone on Zoom, I'm gonna pause the recording really quick while I pull up the right presentation. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Proposed brick fence will be. Go ahead, and what I do have shown, just so you understand why the height requirement is I do have an at-scale drawing of my home, which I could pass around if it wouldn't go. But the 4'10" requirement means that the height of my fence at that center wall aligns with the bottom of the foundation of my house. So one of the emails that I got, 3 from my assigned city planner with public feedback, was I would be so sad if I can't see your pretty house anymore, verbatim. My house is fully visible. As long as you're over 4'10", the top of the fence lines up with the bottom foundation of my home. Okay, so go ahead and go next. Let's see.
Okay, Carter sent me another version of the presentation, so I'm
Okay.
gonna try looking it back.
Okay. Oh, that's not it.
Go ahead, let's
Oh, okay.
keep going through and see if it's.
Maybe it is. There it is. So as you can see, the reason for the elevations and the scale of my measurements are to align with the bottom of my foundation. So this really, no higher, no lower. This is what it needs to be aesthetically pleasing. And I'm not interested in investing and progressing with a project that I don't think is beautiful. Like I said, this is the home that I plan to stay in forever. And I've redone every inch of it. And I'd like to do it the right way, quite frankly. And the safety factor is just simply knowing that 4 feet, while it doesn't look good, it also doesn't quite cut it. We're pretty sure with a running start at 5 feet elevation, I'm the shortest one in my family, my 13-year-old 6'3". We could jump it and my peanut could definitely jump it. So it's really not serving the safety. It's really not serving me from a safety perspective as well at a lower height. Can you go back to my presentation? Sorry.
It's okay, I think I can.
Okay, it's helpful to keep that as like a second tab though, just so that, because that like shows the scale drawing of the whole thing, but then go back to the presentation because there's a couple other views I want to point out.
Let me just make sure Justin was seeing, because I think it was matted.
It is, yeah.
Justin, can you see? Okay, here's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Share it.
I would suggest at this point, although it's unfortunate, we're having some of the technical difficulties, and I can see that you really put a lot of time
I
into it.
know. So there's
We
just like
do-
2 more things. I just want to show you 2 more things. I can talk really fast, but we're already here. So just click through the slides. I'm sorry, I don't have control of them. So the yellow line, I just wanted to point out that is again the proposed location. So no one feels like it's tight on the sidewalk to them when they're walking or to the street. You can go to the next slide. The next slide just shows that with regards to pedestrian safety, which is really important to me, the full length of my large SUV fits. It's 18 feet 6 inches from the curb to my proposed fence, and it's over 4.5 from the fence to the sidewalk. So I saw one public comment, it was the same one that was worried about it not showing my pretty house, that it would look like a back alley. And this looks nothing like a back alley fence, nor is it encroaching on anyone who might be enjoying Marsh Avenue by car or by foot. Go ahead and go to the next one. And so that's it. I really do appreciate your time. Jeff Foster has been super helpful to me along the way. John Hester and Chelsea Capril were 2 neighbors that reached out to me privately when they got the postcard. They submitted comments in favor once they let me explain what we're actually doing. Again, I totally respect the concerns with the postcard that comes from the city that says a 6-foot fence, that you might jump to the conclusion of the worst case scenario, but that's really not what I'm trying to achieve. And I hope now that you've seen it, you can feel better about supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for working through the technical.
Yeah, thanks, sorry.
It's a quick question. Is it a see-through fence? I can.
Just in the brick on the 51 feet of the center wall is see-through.
And
The
then,
ends are only 15 feet and it's too small on the side.
and then do you have gates that are going across? the-
I will have gates, but I don't currently have a plan for gates. They can't, what I can tell you right now is that because of my old history house, I have a grandfather USPS mail delivery route. And so they are required to go through my loop driveway to deliver my mail, which is amazing. It's actually, my mailbox is like a party trick at my house. My son can fit in a little closet where my mail is delivered. It's amazing and I don't ever want to change it. So I will always have my gates open. The only reason I will close it is, quite frankly, on Halloween, when I don't want to welcome 3,000 people in my front yard. And when I want my kids to play in the front yard. Safely.
Yes. So can I ask to clarify why you feel you need it to be more than 4 feet for safety? Why?
Because I'm pretty sure we could jump it. I know my dog can, plus my kids. I put in there, I mean, my husband thinks even like a rolling basketball would maybe possibly go over it because of the elevation change. Coming down a hill. It's 5 feet from my house to the fence.
Yeah.
And I don't want to create anything ugly.
And why would 4 feet be ugly?
It doesn't proportionately fit the scale of my property or my house.
And why, can I ask a planning question? Why the city normally asks for 4 feet as the maximum height? There must be a reason for that. And I think it's aesthetically more pleasing in general, but is there another kind of reason why that's normally?
4 feet isn't the standard in the city of Reno for a long time. A lot of municipalities actually
Yeah.
prohibit entirely fences in the front yard. So this has just been a consistent standard for a long time. It's just how it is.
It's certainly more welcoming to have no fence or a low fence than to have a higher fence. I would certainly be careful about that. And if you're going to, if the whole reason is to keep the dogs and whatnot in, then you would have to have gates. You have to have the whole
Yeah.
thing closed. So if you build that fence without a gate initially, it's still not serving the purpose of keeping the dogs and the kids in, so you would
It's-
essentially have to have something going all the way across.
Right, I mean, it significantly provides barrier across the full length of my property, with the exception of the 2 driveway openings. So first, it is better than nothing, and we decided it was still important to move forward with the fence, even despite not being fully confident what the gate solution is gonna be. I'm really confident there's a gate solution, but I don't know what it is. I don't think that it can be mechanical, because the only option for mechanical is if it's fully retracted up because of the slope of my driveway, and that would be ugly, which I'm pretty clear everyone knows I don't want. So it can't be mechanical, it's only gonna be a push gate, but because of the slope of my driveway, I don't have a solution of what that's gonna be yet. I can tell you the shape, I can tell you it's iron, it's gonna be see-through, it's nothing, I don't, from like a design, but it's only the height of my wall, 4'10". But I don't actually know how it's gonna work to open and close this way, given the slope of the driveway. There are also temporary solutions and netting that I found that would hide behind the column, the fence posts, and I could retract them closed. That would be a barrier to catch a rolling ball down the street. Like I said, it's better than nothing. Doesn't solve the dog comment, but I mean, I'm trying.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments in the room?
Looks like we have one color.
I think
You were coming before this group in 2012, my wife and I lived on a corner lot about 2 blocks from your house. And we have an existing, it's in our case, 4.5 foot fence, and we wanted to raise it 18 inches. We presented it, and we were told no at the time by this group. We didn't pursue it any further than that. Our option was you can go 6 feet if you come 10 feet off your property line, or you can go 4.5. So rather than have our fence, we built 10 feet of garden and kind of mixed hedge and everything like that, because we are on a sidewalk that gets walked constantly where you're not necessarily.
Yeah.
Because I agree.
Because ours is us, right at our house, actually.
But the one thing I did think is the street is low and it is probably a foot or 1.5 or 2 feet up to where your fence line is. It would feel like from the street driving by that it is a 6-foot fence. I see what your design criteria are. It's a little bit secret, but there are so many fences in our neighborhood where people have not gone through this process and they're there. That's maddening when you put.
I'm trying to
fences
do it right.
on it,
Yeah.
and you're trying
Thank you. And just to add, if I can, the elevation of the street and the sidewalk are actually almost the same, because I've learned a lot doing this, and they're actually quite the same. So it really isn't even that much lower in a quad.
My wife used the 2 golden retrievers to clear this fence. And in our case, what's on the other side of the street, the house is actually 5 or 6 feet higher. And at the time, it was very transactional residence where lots of cars coming and going, misbehaving and things like that. So we sell for our safety from the outside, not from us to the outside. And I would also like to bring up Halloween.
Okay.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
We have 2 questions. What is the setback? Within what setback is a structure considered a fence? So if this is being considered like a 4'10" or whatnot, if it were moved back by like X inches, does it still qualify? Like, what are we actually talking about here?
So Carl Williams, assistant planner for the record, so in single or residential lots, so any zone that is primarily for residential. Any wall structure or fence structure that is in front of the front face of the house is considered a fence. So
whether
we
it's
would apply the same
5 feet or
standard.
30 feet,
Yes.
it's still a fence.
So in reference to his comment, there are changes in height depending on if the lot is like a corner lot. It may change if you can go 6 feet in height on one side, but since this is there's no corner, the whole frontage is on the lot face. That's the restriction of 4 feet is in the entire front yard.
And the second part of that is if the code calls for 4 feet and the fence is built at 4 feet, what happens if there's shrubbery behind it that's at 6 feet? Does that still constitute a fence?
Landscaping is not included in that definition. So technically shrubbery and landscaping wouldn't be subject to that standard unless it conflicts with site vision triangles Like if it blocks people being able to see around corners, that's a different situation.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, any other questions with the board? Zoom?
Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment? If you'd like to give public comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. I'll give you just a minute. Mr. Chair, it looks like we have no
I
comments.
just got one more question.
Go ahead.
At what point, when you have a number of homes that have not gone through this process, that have built up an arbitrary fence of whatever, right, 6 feet, 7 feet, and no one's had any issues, at what point is anything done about that? Like, does the code end up changing because, let's say the entire neighborhood decides to erect like 7 foot, really beautiful skyline style horizontal slot fences, and then we call them on it? And now like one person tries to go through the proper channels, they're not allowed to, so they end up kind of going the same way as others.
So
Which I'm not, for the record, I'm not trying to create loopholes.
I'll answer that. So you're in an area that is pre-war development, and you always have to remember Reno didn't adopt zoning until mid-60s. So, the era of what something might have been built in the absence of zoning regulations, is something you always have to consider. So that's one point. And then really, it would be through, probably best case scenario, neighborhood planning. You go through, whenever you do any planning process, you look at your existing conditions and you document those. So if you were doing a neighborhood plan where you were very fine grained, and Reno did that many years ago, we haven't done it. Actually, I forgot to mention, we had a affordable housing workshop the other day in, thinking about some policy, and he said, you should start doing neighborhood planning, which I've been, trying to argue for a number of years. But if you did go through a neighborhood planning, you look very fine grained at your existing conditions, and, then your next day, good conditions you like, good conditions you don't like, and then, align your regulation refinement with that. So that would be the process.
I think it's an interesting question, though. If you don't enforce the rules, it's still a rule. That's really what you're asking, right?
Yeah. To Councilwoman Brick's point, like there is before code was put in place, I understand that certain things were built, like Mount Rose. There's a massive property with what seems like a 9-foot fence that's just solid stone. That was probably built well before any code was created. But there's also acknowledgement, like, I see this happen all the time, even within our neighborhood, fences go up. And there's no question of like, this is clearly above 4 feet. It's like maybe 4'5" or 6 foot. And one of the things I'm looking at is like, what is the spirit of what the fence is trying to accomplish? If the code is meant to provide for safety, so if there's a 6 foot fence at a driveway, yeah, you could absolutely make the argument that's going to block visibility and hurt traffic. But is there a way in which code can still be upheld and still allow for fences to be built if certain safety requirements are met? So is this really a code about safety, or is it a code about aesthetics? Like, what is the code really looking to enforce?
So the code has different standards for both a visual perspective and a safety perspective. So there's standards for height of the fence maximum within so many feet of the driveway, so that there's visibility around headquarters from. So it's a combination of both. But I mean, to address some of those conditions, I think to answer the question that you brought up in the beginning, more about if we have a lot of these deviations that come about. It's really a policy discussion on updating the code to make this more of an administrative function. But there's also benefits to bringing it before this body and planning commission because we don't have this more of a neighborhood planning code right now. We said that not in this area. So those are, there are definite policy questions that can be addressed in the future. Right now, this is our tool, the major deviation. So, and then there's sort of what else with it. So.
It is a much more flexible tool than that which used to be in place, which is a variance, which has a much stricter test analysis. So the code has created greater flexibility than it had before. But I think the 6 feet safety consideration is also to the public traveling the sidewalk, so that they can see, you know, as they walk along, if anyone is along that, that
Blind spot.
yeah, that 6 feet where in an opening, they could, you know, have, you know, interaction with that person. I think that's part of why 6 feet, 4 feet is more standard height.
Any more,
Thank you.
any more questions or comments? So thank you very much for
Thank you.
using the process.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. All right. It brings us to item B13, Greystone Castle. Thank you for hanging out with us and your patience for us getting here. It's a little late, so thank you.
No problem. My name is Melissa Hafey and I'm a management assistant with Arts and Culture.
Before we start, Mr. Sharp, looks like we're having some technical issues with the Zoom, not sharing the presentation. Justin, can you see the presentation right now, or do you still just see us?
I still only see you.
Okay. The presentation is part of the board packet, so all the board members do have it, and I'll make sure you get a copy right now, Justin, and then the presentation will become part of the record after the meeting for members of the public. In the meantime, we can go ahead and just pull it up and start. Just let me know when you are ready. Full screen for the next slide. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'm presenting to you, I work on historic preservation for the city, and I'm presenting to you the nomination of Greystone Castle for our local historic register, our Register of Historic Places in the city of Reno. That provides some protection for this historic property. Next slide. The property location is at 970 Joaquin Miller Drive. It is just north of Monroe. The back driveway actually is on Monroe, as if the garage is entered from Monroe Street. Joaquin Miller is just a very small street between Nixon and Bret Hart and Newland Manor subdivision of Ward 1. Next slide. On November 9th, the Historical Resources Commission of the City of Reno approved a recommendation to City Council to list Greystone Castle on the City of Reno Register of Historic Places. And so I'm presenting it to you the NAB today, so that we can celebrate recognizing Greystone Castle as a registered historic site. Next slide. A little bit of background about Greystone Castle. It was designed and built by W.E. Barnard, who built or was behind the effort to build most of the houses in the Newlands Manor area. He also built the house to the east of Greystone Castle. It's called Barnard Place. If anybody participated in the Historic Homes Walking Tour or the Harvest of Homes Tour that the Historic Reno Preservation Society offered this fall, the folks on that tour were able to enter the building that is Barnard Castle Barnard to the east of this property, but they're very similar. They have a very similar appearance. They're in a Tudor style with this is like a Cotswold cottage features. It's made out of local stone and was built in 1930. The next steps for this property are that it will go in front of City Council likely in December 13th for 2 reviews for the historic overlay on the parcel.
Got it?
That's it.
Okay, then.
Okay.
Oh, also the owners of the property are here, and I want to thank the
good.
Gilberts for nominating their property for our historic
Say a
register.
few things about it, just so that people know. The 3 houses, the house that they were referring to was on the tour this year. That's Holly's Cottage. So the Stewart Indians back in the 30s.
30.
Okay, so when they were training the Indians they trained them in masonry. So if you look at these houses, the masonry is wild and crazy, including the one across the street, Mrs. Costantina's house. So when they did masonry, they did it wild and crazy. And so it's also about the Stewart Indians. The other thing is that these were the model homes for Newland's banner, and so we have the advertisement for this was $400, and it was on the lot of homes. So I thought I'd put that out there in terms of historical information, because it's pretty cool.
And I want to add, thing.
Can you just say?
The three homes on 970 are brother Joaquin Miller Drive, Holly Cottage, Graceland Castle, and Casa del Rey. Were the model homes for Newland, all built by W.E. Barnard as a model home. We own two of them, Casa del Rey and Graceland Castle.
Thank you very much. Can you just state your name for the record, please?
Jim Gilbert.
Thank you, Jim.
What was the year it was built?
About 1930.
And Deb Hammond has a lot of the, like the advertisement for the sale of one of the homes that we have framed in the house, so you can see it.
May I ask a couple questions? One is to you, and then one maybe more of a planning question. What does this then impose upon the owners as far as what they can do or not do or whatever with the property? And then sort of a larger question, I've always kind of wondered about the zoning of the Newlands Manor area. It seems to be different than other areas as far as what can be done on the properties, like can ADUs be put on there, or like, there seem to be some restrictions, or are there in that area that because of these historic homes, or what?
I can just answer the first part and I'll let Carter cover the Newlands neighborhood restrictions. This property is already both listed as an individual resource on the National Register of Historic Places, which made it eligible for listing on our local register. And is also a contributing resource for a National Historic District that encompasses Newlands all the way up to the river, to Truckee River, and then down to Monroe. National designation doesn't actually protect your property or come with any restrictions. So if you have a home on the National Register or as a contributing resource in the Newlands Historic District, you can still alter it in any way that you want. You can demolish it, you can put a new facade on the front and make it look very modern. There's no restrictions. Adding it to the local register of historic places does come with restrictions to alterations on the exterior of the building only. So whatever you do on the interior to improve the home doesn't come before any kind of body of the city of Reno or fall under any additional regulations than what's already required by building permits. But in any alteration to the exterior other than routine maintenance would come under a review called a certificate of appropriateness process or application that is reviewed by the Historical Resources Commission to ensure that those exterior alterations don't negatively affect the integrity of the home, the historic integrity of the home. So you couldn't, you can, for example, paint or landscaping, repairs that are not going to alter that exterior appearance are not restricted. But if you wanted to add a second story or change the cladding on the outside of the building or something along those lines, that was going to really alter the appearance, then that would just require an approval from the Historical Resources Commission. And Newlands.
Yeah, so part of the system plan for the record. From a zoning perspective, Newlands actually is all base zoning, so there's no special overlays, no special standards that would apply to other places in the city. There was at one point a move for a Newlands neighborhood plan that never got adopted, unfortunately, that had additional standard or considered additional standards. There is also a conservation district that also doesn't have standards in code. So your comment on ADUs, that's actually a city walk. There's limited places in the city where accessory dwelling units are allowed. But generally restrictions, I think that there's CCNRs,
No, they're expired.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's not really anything other than standard city code and zoning based on the specific densities. So Newlands has some single family, it has a little bit of like lower density multifamily areas.
Okay.
But it's
Like MF14?
MF14, yes.
Over in here?
But a couple things is, this is a really big deal because the city, this is probably only the 17th property put on is it number 17?
Because there were two demolished.
Two were demolished by the university. And so, right, they were university.
One was university, one was.
Mr. Jacobs, yeah, Mr. Jacobs, and one was the university. So it's really spectacular to have the Gilberts, who are such wonderful stewards, do this. It's a real big deal. And then, two is, the exterior, that is also controlled by the designation, correct? Like the fence. What's the rear of the property look like? How's that gonna be?
There's a,
How's that, the certificate of appropriateness gonna look for that one?
because the rear of the property is visible from the public right of way, like from the
Yeah.
sidewalk. And the garage was listed as a contributing resource in, the National Register nomination. Those, there's like a stucco wall on the
Yeah.
back, a boundary wall, and the entrance to the garage.
Yeah,
So those are also part of the protected.
okay, so those will also be incorporated into the certificate of appropriateness record of it. Okay.
Yeah, yes, so alterations to that
Yeah.
boundary wall or the garage.
Yeah, that's
There's
to be
an old
managed.
gate with
Yeah.
an old wrought iron.
Yeah,
That's part of the stucco, and so there's an old gate, that old iron on it. It's pretty cool.
okay, and then, thank you, and then the last question is, why was it called a castle? Did you, has anything, because it's such a,
That was my
it's rather than, I mean, it was obviously marketing or something, yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe, it was very,
It's evil,
yeah, okay.
Church.
Like,
Yeah.
you have like concave steps or?
No, it's all involved and then you have
Yeah,
that window.
yeah.
It feels like a church when you come into the.
It's only 1,200.
Yeah, that's why the castle is such a misnomer. Yeah, but thank you, I'm so, so appreciative and so grateful to the Gilberts who are really the forefront of the stewardship in our city, really, in many ways.
We restored a lot of.
It's beautiful.
When we can.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. We have any more?
I just wanted to say that, it's interesting to know about the stone, because the stone is exactly like the Seward Indian School. Exactly. Now,
Look at the house across the street, this is Constantino.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, I want that house so bad. I want to restore it, get that.
That was a public comment by Susan Hopkins.
I'm sorry.
And it's got a nice fence, you can see right in.
Is there any other public comment on this item in the room?
Thanks, Greg.
That was wrong. Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment on this item? If you'd like to give public comment on this item via Zoom, you can use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. It doesn't look like there's any public comments from Zoom on this item, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again for presenting and staying with us. It's late, so thank you. And thank you. Any reports or from the board members? Okay, any requests for future agenda items?
It looks like in December, we will have a training from our clerk. She has suggested, but I wanted to make sure I was comfortable with it, some training on decorum. And there's different standards of behavior, in different ways. And so I didn't really see that in her work program because she reports to the council. So it kind of came out of the blue to me and I wanted to have a better understanding of it. But she has requested to come in and do that. And that would be separate and apart from any legal training the neighborhood advisory boards receive in terms of compliance with the appropriate open meeting. Yeah, it sounds like she's, maybe more related to the Roberts rules, but these boards operate very informal, so,
Yeah,
so it's a mashup of that, but she's asked to come in on December with that.
well, it would be an interesting opportunity to have a conversation.
I've got two things, I'm not sure, again, the best way to do it. On Lakeside, the elementary school, there's a couple crosswalks. Something about illumination or anything, the number of times where there are people who are crossing, whether they choose to wear all black or not, doesn't really matter, it's just the visibility is so bad. And really concerned about this. Yeah, and I'm sure this is an issue all across Reno, but at least from what's visible to me, Lakeside, going south.
At Rigby.
Yeah,
probably.
thank you. That, and then also for Marsh, or for the Newlands neighborhood during Halloween.
Yeah.
When the streets are closed down, there are porta potties that are put in on the streets. But there's also a whole lot of trash that's left afterwards,
Oh.
which seems to be left to the responsibility of the homeowners to clean up. But if the city's gonna shut down the streets, should the city not be made, but would the city help with the cleanup efforts?
Yeah, what, Heather will write that, I mean,
Is the trash, that you saw, was it like in the street, the sidewalk, or
All
are there
over.
candy wrappers everywhere?
Yeah, it seems to be all
it just
over.
became a mess, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of exacerbated by the fact that, you know, if the city shuts down the streets, it's kind of left to, it's like, this is free for all.
That's,
Yeah,
I can make a note for our special events.
For next year.
Coordinator for
Yeah.
next year to see if they can get a street
Yeah.
sweeper to come in after and
yeah,
do a little bit of.
that's
cleanup.
how good events die.
yeah.
Is when all the neighbors close their gates.
This is only the 6th year it's been closed, and it was really out of pure panic.
Sure, yeah.
Of me being like, someone's
Safety.
gonna get hit here,
Yeah.
and so each year, you know, we kind of, I think now it's a known, it's gonna happen, but they'll keep notes for next year for that.
I mean, it's supposed to be every here.
Do you have any other?
Possible agenda item.
Yes.
I know there has some tentative planning options for Barbara Bennett Park. I assume they'll be addressed on the 16th. And maybe as an agenda item, we could see a presentation on that as well as what occurred on the 16th.
Yeah, I'm curious about the, to run on your idea there, I'm curious about how the Arlington Bridge closure affects that project specifically.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal because we're gonna lose that whole park, not Barbara Bennett.
Well, last I heard, both of them for 2 years.
Yeah, Wingfield and everything, I think,
Yeah.
quite some time.
2 years.
Yeah.
And it was the city's idea, not RTC. So that would be a good future agenda item.
I'll just put in the request of our Parks Department, I'll put the Parks Department and see if they'd like to come to a future meeting.
Yeah, after you said something. That, I've talked to him about it before, but maybe more than the parks, maybe it's the public works folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Parks for Barbara Bennett and Public Works for Arlington and improvements and.
well, no, it was because when I talked to our folks in the parks, they said, that's not really a parks decision, it is a public works decision.
Okay, I'll start with Public Works.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other requests for future agenda items from the board?
All right.
We have one more item, closing public comment. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to give public comment on really any topic? Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment? If you would like to give public comment, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Mr. Chair, it does look like we have a closing public comment
Very good.
from Nona Perry. Nona, I'm going to allow you to unmute in just a minute. Please start your comments by stating your full name for the record, and we'll have 3 minutes. Nona, I've given you the ability to unmute. You should be able to.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm gonna.
I sent in a letter and it looks like, Jenny saw it. I live next to Oxbow Park on 2 sides. I'm very concerned about the dangers that are not being addressed in the park. And I am absolutely flabbergasted that the school district has decided not to send school buses in because it's too dangerous. That is what I'm trying to get across to the city of Reno. The park is dangerous. When my father was convinced by the city of Reno to sell the entrance to the park, which goes right through my yard, and now it's like a major highway, that it would be a nature preserve, that it would be for the animals. And it was fine for several years. And there was someone who was in charge. I think it was a woman. She was with the Department of Wildlife. And I just recently talked to a maintenance guy from the city of Reno who was fixing the bathroom in the park for the millionth time. And he said, oh, didn't you know she was raped? So they decided never to have another person be in charge down here again. I was flabbergasted. Can you imagine how I felt when I found that out? I think that this park needs to be put at the top of any kind of decision making for the city of Reno and looked at and managed well before it becomes a place where somebody else is raped or who knows, shot. I live right next door. I'm the last of the Mohicans. I'm like the last human being along with the animals that live there. It used to be my backyard and now it belongs to the city of Reno. And I think that you guys need to step up and make it safe.
Thank you for your comments now.
If no, thank you very much.
Is there anyone else on Zoom who'd like to give public comment today? If you'd like to give public comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. I don't see any further public comment, Mr. Chair.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Can I get another motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All right. Thank you.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Those in favor.
Meeting is adjourned.
You're gonna do a sheet.